Hi guys, and welcome to our first writing class online. For those of you that don't know me, because this is going on the internet, my name is Tiana Brown. I've been teaching writing class for several years now at a little private school called New Heights for Kids, and I decided that I wanted to put my writing classes online. So we're gonna start with just some foundational principles for the first time. And so for my students that are watching, this is gonna be some things that you've heard before from me, but it's a new semester, so we're gonna relearn them anyway. And some things are gonna be new. So the first thing that I wanna do is something that I always do with my classes. I actually got this in college from one of my professors, and have found using quotes from other writers to be very inspirational, very helpful. So the first two that we have is one from Terry Pratchett, and it says, "The first draft is just you telling yourself the story." The second one that we have is by Jody Pickalt? I don't know. I butchered her name, but anyway. And it says you can always edit a bad page, but you can't edit a blank page. And I picked these two to start off with because basically the whole point is to just get started writing. That's the most foundational principle that we could start with at all, because if you don't start writing, you can't go anywhere. Once you start, then we actually have something that we can work with. So our first foundational principle then is going to be one that if you've been in writing pretty much any at all, you probably have heard before. It is show, don't tell. Now, like I said, it's one of the most common writing advices that is given, and honestly, I still think it's the most important. Not because people don't listen, but because showing can always be improved. Description is something that is incredibly important to a story, but is also something that is very difficult to actually get down to a fine art, to know when to describe and when not to describe. So I'm serious, never stop working on this. So, but for the sake of being thorough, for those of you that are not in my class and haven't ever had me before, let me just explain this point a little bit in case you haven't heard this before. So, for instance, to tell someone something is basically like saying, "It made Anna sad." That is unoriginal, uninteresting, and quite frankly, really boring. It's not fun, it's not engaging, nobody cares if it made Anna sad. The people don't read a story just to know the story most of the time. People read a story to experience the story, and "it made Anna sad" doesn't really help me to experience the story on any level. I just know that Anna's sad. So, because that's not an experience, it's a fact, we'll want to change it to something like this instead. Anna felt a pang in her chest as she beheld the scene. Each pound of her heart rattled her fragile frame until she felt she would completely rip apart. Her throat itself choked her as her vision churned with unwanted tears. We've all been sad. Your mind reaches into your past experiences with sadness when you hear something like this, how it feels to have your throat constrict, what tears look like even to yourself, and how your heart sometimes feels like it actually hurts. That's the power of a writer. You can actually use people's memories to make them feel what you want them to feel. So, we'll move on to our second foundational principle. Kill adverbs. Now, this one is a little bit weird as a foundational principle, but I think for most of my viewers or for my students, you're at least at a high school level, if not further along. So adverbs are really something that can be really helpful, but at the same time can actually really limit your writing. So I included it as a foundational principle because if you're wanting to go further in your writing, this is something that you're gonna have to wane down quite a bit for most writers. So what is an adverb? Pretty much it's any word that ends with the letters IL. I know that's a little bit vague, but if it ends with IL, you can pretty much bet that it's an adverb. And it especially is probably one that we want to remove. For those of you, though, who know how to diagram a sentence, an adverb is actually any word that describes a verb, whether that's where the verb is happening or when the verb is happening, those kinds of things. But not all adverbs are bad, and we'll get to that in a second. So for example, we have like, he ran quickly, they blinked slowly, it pounded painfully, snapped loudly, etc. Now again, not all adverbs are necessarily bad. So for instance, if you say blinked slowly, well, we don't really have a word in the English language that would put slowly and blinked together into one word. It doesn't exist. So that adverb actually is okay. But like if you're saying he ran quickly, we actually have a word for that. It's called sprinting. And that's a much better word picture than saying they ran quickly. So always whenever you're writing, especially when you're writing verbs, actually keep your thesaurus really close to you, because if you come up with an adverb like that, always check and see if there's a verb that would actually replace that and make your meaning a little more clear with less words. Less words is always, always better. So our third foundational principle is to keep the tense consistent. Okay, so I know, again, for people who have been writing really for any length of time at all, this is kind of one that you roll your eyes at, like, duh, I know this. Tense is either past, present, future, something that either you did in the past, you're doing in the present, or you will do in the future. It's I ran, I run, I will run. By this point, like I said, high schoolers and up, you pretty much know that, but it's actually something that people still struggle with in writing. So I concluded it as one of the foundational principles, because if this is messed up in your writing, I can't even tell you how much that throws off your reader. And if you've ever experienced that while you're reading, it can be incredibly distracting. So always make sure that whenever you're done writing something, go through and check and make sure that all of your tenses are the same. So for our fourth foundational principle, watch your conjunctions. So again, this is gonna be kind of a roll your eyes at this one, but you have to pay attention to it. Even those people that you feel like you know this is pretty obvious, keep checking. There's always improvement that can be done. So conjunctions are words like and, but, yet, so, those kinds of things. Things that connect sentences together usually have a comma. We hear them a lot, and they can be kind of annoying. Sometimes they're also really great and super helpful. So when do you know when to use them, and how do you know when to not? Honestly, what I tell my students is that these are great and helpful words, but sometimes if you have too many of them, they can actually be really annoying and very frustrating for a reader, because everything is connected with an and. You have sentences that are way too long, and nobody wants to read the same sentence structure over and over and over again, which if you're using a conjunction, it's very possible that that's happening. I know this is a small step, and again, maybe one to roll your eyes at, but it's actually a foundational principle to writing a good story, because conjunctions can sneak in there without you even realizing it. And then you're using them again and again and just rambling on and on forever, and yet you don't even realize that you're doing it, so you keep on using them, and then your reader just ends up wanting to kill you, or worse, stop reading your material. Shoot, did I just... All right, and so now we're on to our final foundational principle. Whenever you're writing a good story, you need to have only one objective. Now, for my students who have been in my class before, they have heard me beat on this until it was dead, past dead, in the grave, and resurrected again. I cannot say this enough, because I think so many good stories actually have great ideas, but then they fail because they try to touch on too many things all at once, especially in short stories. You always have to be careful of this. So I want you to make sure that whatever goal that you have, and sometimes you don't know when you're starting what your goal is, but whatever goal that you end up deciding that is the purpose of why you're writing whatever it is that you're writing, you need to stick to that goal. And again, like I said, sometimes that goal happens while you're in the process of writing it. You just start writing it, you don't even know why. That's okay. Like, please, again, the first draft is just you telling yourself the story. Get it out. Like, don't let any of these things distract you from actually writing and make it so stressful. That's what editing is for. However, whenever you go back and you're editing, you want to make sure that your end goal is not only clear to your reader, or at least can be once introspective and things like that, depending on what kind of story that you're writing and the purpose of it. But you want that your objective to actually be accomplished. So if you're going on too many directions all at the same time, your reader has no idea what's even happening anymore. So always remember, whether that's you're writing a chapter and you need something to happen by the end of the chapter to move the story forward, or whether you have a lesson that you're trying to teach or a picture you're trying to paint, whatever it is, if there's anything else in your story that doesn't help this move along, even by little bits, cut it out. It doesn't need to be there. So all of that being said, thank you all for watching my video. Welcome to writing class, and I look forward to hearing back from you guys. For my students, I actually have your assignment. I will email it to you, don't worry, but I will go ahead and give it to you here. Your assignment is, I want you to write a 2 to 4 page story. It doesn't have to be double spaced or anything because I'm going to be editing out online. And I want you to go through and make sure that everything that I have touched on, that you're able to see that it's represented. So I want to be able to see things. So make sure that whenever you're going through, after you've written it, that there are things that I'm seeing, I'm feeling. Don't just tell me what's going on, show me what's going on. If you can keep all the ly words out of your page, that would be great. I don't want to see any ly verbs or adverbs in this writing assignment at all. Keeping your tense consistent. I know sometimes that can be hard depending on flashbacks and that kind of stuff. Don't do anything like that. I want it to be simple, keep your tenses consistent, and that way we can work on that part of the foundational principles. Again, with your conjunctions, I know some of you struggle with this more than others. Just be careful to watch them. I will be counting them and they will go against the points that you have in the paper. And then we have one objective. Remember, whatever point that you're trying to make, whatever story you're trying to tell it and tell only it. Again, this is not the way that every paper should be written. I'm not giving you like, oh, every story should look like this. Absolutely not. This is just an exercise in order to help us to not write with conjunctions. Like I said, conjunctions can be good. ly words can be good. I just don't want them in this paper. All right, I love you guys. Happy writing.